Ghosty fam, Amy here. Welcome to The Activity Continues, a podcast where three soul friends talk about all things paranormal. Ghosts, hauntings, psychics, movies and TV shows, especially The Dead Files, and other spooky and spooky adjacent things. We also like to interview people in the paranormal community, as well as past Dead Files clients and other interesting people. Sometimes we even tell your stories. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello. Thanks for joining us for our first episode of 2025. We hope you all had a bit of a year-end break and are all recharged and ready for the new year. In this episode, we discuss the Dead Files episode. I said episode a lot, didn't I?
You did. Take a drink every time she says episode. You'll be bombed before we start.
That's right. Luckily, we didn't do that while we were recording because we have, as you know, we do these intros at the end. So we have just finished talking about this. We spoke about Hotel Hell. It was first aired October 28th, 2011. And Megan, you picked this one. Do you want to let us know why you picked it or how you chose it?
You know, I wish I could tell you there was like rhyme or reason, but I just know we haven't done an episode 1 in a while. And this one jumped out at me with the title. And so that's why I chose it. And it was a really, really good one. So I'm glad I did.
Oh, so funny because Megan has famously said before she does not like doing ones that are not in a house.
That's right.
I do.
She doesn't like business ones.
But the alliteration really stuck out to me.
Hotel Hell. Oh, that's right. She does like words.
I do like
that is true.
That is true.
Content warning, there is talk of suicide. There's talk of experimentation on animals, specifically cats. There's also discussion
potentially humans.
Humans. There's also discussion of schizophrenia. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Morgues.
At the end, I brought it up, talked a little bit about JonBenet Ramsey and the documentary that I watched. So if that's something you don't like, then just, when we've done with the recap, turn it off there. We do have a little housekeeping. I just want to remind you that sideshows are Patreon only now. And we are now at an every 2-week schedule release for the masses. So we will be doing either a Dead Files related episode or an interview with somebody or ghost stories, listener stories.
Spooky.
Send them on in if you got them.
In.
And then the other weeks we will be off unless you are a
patron.
And then you will scoot over and listen to our sideshows where we just talk about all sorts of shit.
It's a fun time.
Today was Hallmark movies.
Yes, it was.
Which when this is released will be way over Hallmark, but you can still go watch all the Hallmark Christmas movies, and it'll be Valentine's Day movies now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I might just end up keeping friendly.
You should.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody.
Enjoy the episode.
Yes.
We hope you like it. We had a good time doing it.
And thank you for listening to us.
Yeah. And there's people coming out of the walls. There's a lot of people coming out of the walls.
Hello. Thanks for joining us for our first episode of 2025. In this episode, we're discussing the Dead Files episode Hotel Hell. It first aired October 28th, 2011. Megan picked this one, so she's going to read the overview for you guys.
Yes. Tessa and her father, Jack, reached out to Steve and Amy to get more information about what they are sharing their hotel with. Not only do they see apparitions and feel negative energies, but their guests have reported feeling the same. While nothing has been dangerous per se, Tessa and Jack want to understand what is in their hotel, what they're sharing with, and if they need to do anything to live in peace with these entities. After interviewing the clients, Steve digs through the archives and finds out that there were some Mafia ties to the land and researches that some more to get information on that. Starting in the early 1900s, Ybor City went through an era known as the Era of Blood. Brothels, gambling, and Mafia ties led to a brutal era within Ybor City's history, the South's version of the Wild Wild West. Did these spirits stay with the land? Was there really Mafia activity in the location that Steve and Amy are investigating? Is there a way that Tessa and Jack can coexist with spirits in the hotel? And most importantly, will the activity continue?
That's a lot of questions. Okay, so the first thing that we talked about in our, 'cause if you guys don't know, if you're new and you haven't done this, you haven't listened to us much, the way that we do this is I get a transcript of the episode and then I put it in our drive, and then each of us goes in and makes notes within the transcript of how we feel, ideas, jokes, whatever that we have while we're watching it. So then when we comes to today and we sit down to do this, we look at the transcript and add each other's notes. So if you hear one of us say, hey, I see that you said da da da, that's where we're talking about, is that it's in this document that we're using to go through the recap. The first thing that was mentioned in this one was that we all had some opinions about Amy Allen's hair, which is funny because I think in the last episode, I think you, Megan, said some people on Facebook just want to talk about how they don't like Amy's hair.
Yeah. And like 99.9% of the time, I love her hair. And even in this episode with her hairstyle, when she kind of pins it back, like during the sketch, I think it's just super cute.
Yeah.
But when during the walk, it's just it's very, that picture that Amy put in there of whoever this person is.
Joan Jett.
I was going to say it's very Joan Jett-esque.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what, and I said I liked her hair when it was all messy like that in the what I called the matte cam scenes. I thought it was super cute. When it's very rock and roll, but when it was all like smooth, I did not like it with the barrettes.
Oh, I thought it was so cute.
Yeah, it needed to be more punk rock. The way she had it in the walkthrough.
To be fair, my first comment was not about her hair. And
it wasn't. No,
mine was.
That's true. You just said it's
that just like watching the recording and the filming, just like the styles and just the type that is used at that time looks so different than compared to today. Yeah. And so it just gives that it even gives a later 2000 aughts vibe rather than potentially early teens vibe.
Yeah.
Just the way, like, especially when they open and Steve's in the car and as they're talking through that, you can just tell that this stuff is so different. And especially Amy, I know you and I have watched like the old Top Chef episodes. Yeah. Like the old seasons. I can't go beyond season 6. I can't go before season 6 and watch them because they're so bad.
They're really, I think it's really fun to go back and watch those, but yeah. And I mentioned that too in the next segment when he says, I'm investigating this hotel called the Don Vicente Inn. It reminded me of LA Confidential, the movie that was like, it's tough on the streets of LA in 1950. It's like the voiceover. Yeah. And then it's this like gritty detective cam. Yeah. And it's the seedy lifestyle and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And what they are doing, and it's probably a budgetary thing in the beginning here when they weren't rich, they weren't that popular yet. They're using video as opposed to using film. And you can tell the difference. The video looks like a newscast.
Yes.
And film looks film. It's a little bit more smooth and, like video has hard edges and
it very much looks like you could have been taking it with your own personal camcorder.
Yes, exactly. And the shaky stuff, like when they're talking to somebody, they're holding a handheld cam as opposed to putting it on a tripod. Yep. Which I know, and that's probably a creative decision because it's probably so made to look kind of like gritty and, we're getting into this investigation and we're uncovering the da-da-da. And so it definitely has that feel, which the later episodes do not have.
Which then when you watch some of these older episodes back, it just looks tacky almost. Like, I totally understand it.
It looks low budge.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh,
I'm not going to lie. We have started there was a movie that we started to watch that was like this. And I was like, we got about 10 minutes in and like, I can't do this. It was so, I don't even remember what the name of it was. It was so bad.
Well, you would not handle riff tracks well.
You would not like the riff tracks. A lot of them are like that.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that. It was also just the editing choices and all of that sort of stuff. You're just like,
Amy, what was the alligator one? The alligator roller gator.
Yeah, roller gator.
I think the budget for that was $25.
Yeah, at most. And most of that was spent on the food.
Yeah. So they're in Tampa, Florida, in the historic district of Ybor City. which makes me think of Zsa Zsa Gabor, which I know they're not the same, but it sounds the same. Fun fact, everybody, Ybor City was the cigar capital of the world about 100 years ago. So they're investigating, like we said, the Don Vicente Inn. Tessa called them because they encountered a female apparition in the basement. They kind of just like let it go. And then guests were reporting sightings of it. And so they're investigating that to kind of figure out what that's about.
Yeah. And they keep calling it. So the history of the hotel is that it was a hospital before, but they use clinic a lot during this. And so they go back and forth, and those terms are not really interchangeable. However, when it first opened, it may have been more interchangeable. And the reason being, they keep talking about people dying there. People don't typically die in a clinic.
Right.
They're gonna die in the hospital.
A clinic is smaller than a hospital where patients are less sick and you do not stay overnight.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't do surgery in a clinic usually.
No. So
unless it's like shaving off a mole, which I don't think.
Yeah, there might be
surgery.
some minor type things. I mean, when I had my knee surgery done, it's an orthopedic surgical center, but different. Again, it's not a hospital overnight stay, but it's also different than a clinic. So just if you do watch this, if you haven't watched it yet, there's just a lot of confusion because they go back and forth on those, and they really are not the same thing. And I know we talk about it a little bit in our posts and stuff here too, but and especially because we also know that this had a morgue at some point. We don't find that out till way later, but clinics don't have morgues.
Yeah.
And then Tessa goes, it wasn't always a hotel. It became a hospital for some time. And then Steve goes, oh, so this was a hospital. Steve, she just said. She literally just said that.
Yeah.
And then Amy and I had kind of the same thoughts.
There's definitely got to be residual energy here. Just the amount of people that were sick or dying, confused. You know, there's probably just a lot of stuff that's happening that, maybe that leads to some of Amy's confusion she gets later on, is because there's so much going on with I was going to say living people, but not living people with actual, like, what's the term?
Cognitive.
Yeah, there's another term though, but like the spirits that are aware versus the residual energies.
Oh,
but
I don't remember what
none
you call
of us
those.
can think of the word right now.
My brain is.
I've just glommed on to cognitive, and I know that's not right.
That works. It's just not the word I'm thinking. Maybe conscious. I don't know. Anyways.
There are probably 5 people screaming it at us right now.
Yeah.
I wish we could hear
email
you.
us email us or
email us.
Send us a message if you
I did
want to correct us.
Think it was interesting that they said it had been a hotel for the past 11 years. Her dad restored it, and we know what happens when you do any sort of construction is it always tends to kick up the spirits. So it kind of made me think, like, was there activity before they restored it? And I just mean in like the previous hotels.
Well,
hospitals and stuff.
What didn't they say towards the end of it that it was vacant for quite a few years? Like it was the hospital, and then it was vacant for like 30 or 40 years or something like that. Like it was a long time. And then her dad purchased it in 98, took 2 years to restore it, and now they've been running it as a hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, all sorts of things can go on in that time frame.
If a ghost haunts something and nobody's there, are they still haunting it? If a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, does it make a sound? Same thing.
I would assume they are still haunting it.
That'd be boring as a ghost, though, wouldn't you think? Like you do something and nobody sees you.
Yeah.
Just sitting around waiting for it.
Just
waiting for someone to come in.
Yeah. So now they start talking about what sort of activity they're seeing. And so Tessa just says they're concerned about some of the energy here. And Steve says, well, what do you mean? Like a negative energy? And Tessa says she's experienced some things. The guests have experienced some things. And she says, so we kind of want to know who we're sharing our space with here. And I made a note that said, like, this is one of the first, if only, episodes where they don't seem scared. They're not like, my marriage is in turmoil. Our business is going to fail. I'm going to get diabetes.
I was just going to say that.
It's the only explanation.
Read my father's book. It's just like, what's here?
Yeah.
So I thought, to me, this was one of the more interesting aspects of it is you don't get that stereotypical fear. It's just like, we just want to know was here.
Well, and it also makes you wonder, like, especially since what we've heard is that episodes when they're filmed are not always in the order when they're released.
Yeah.
So is this one of, like, we know that this is early on. So is this
only
potentially
episode 5
or 6, depending on where you're looking? But is it, was this actually one of the first 1 or 2 that was? Because maybe they didn't know how to say, like, give us a little bit more detail, or like, what were you feeling during that time? But I did like that Steve does his voiceover. There's a lot of voiceovers in this.
There is a lot of voiceover.
And he's like, well, she really seems concerned and I want to help, but she didn't really give me any information, which I just put, like, in Steve's internal thoughts are going, i.e., what the fuck am I supposed to do here? Like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Well, and plus, I'm sure that they didn't have the plethora of emails they had towards season, the later seasons when they were getting
2
thousands.
or 3 after stuff came through. So
yeah. And then we go to Amy and she says there's this lady. She does a lot. She does. Oh my God.
She does a lot.
She does do. She takes care of a lot of people. She's doing a lot of stuff, taking care of people. She's wearing a nursey shoes. And so she's that's the first spirit that Amy kind of encounters, is that. And so then we go to the basement, which everybody always knows. We're always scared of basements. I don't know what that is.
No, but this basement isn't like...
It's so cute. My first thought when I saw it was like, this is an adorable basement.
Yeah. So like when I think about this, I know they're calling it a basement, but it's like a downstairs area where they have like a ballroom, and you can tell that they've done a lot of stuff here. But she said that they'll do like parties and other things down in that area. And so it's not like the going down the creaky stairs and somebody might grab your
furnace in the middle of the room,
and someone might grab your ankles through the wood slats and the cobwebs. No, and it's really cute though how they did everything. So
there's like cute little restrooms and it's very, so I wonder if it was, and my thought too, which I didn't write down, is, was it creepy before she saw the apparition, or did it become creepy after she saw it?
Yeah, because she just said well, she said when we bought it, it was like a little creepy crawl space, and she said my dad kind of dug it out. So was there actually not a basement there, or was it just so filled with debris from years of vacancy and that sort of stuff, that I got really confused when she said that, because I'm like, you don't just dig out a basement in under a building.
Because when you think of a crawl space, you think small, like teeny area, and this is not small.
And if she said he dug it out, I don't remember hearing that. And I remember. I found some stuff about the basement. Oh, I was surprised that there was a basement, because I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't this in like California or Florida? And it was
Miami
Florida
area.
And so I looked it up, and
Tampa, wasn't it?
It's near. Well, it says it's close to Tampa, but it's Ybor is the name of the city. But
yeah.
And it said that I didn't think that it was known for basements in Florida, because I know they're not in California.
No.
And I Googled it, and it says one of the primary reasons Florida homes lack basements is the state's distinctive geological makeup.
Yeah.
Much of Florida is built on a limestone foundation known as karst. This type of bedrock is porous and can be prone to issues like sinkholes and flooding.
Yeah.
So I thought that it's interesting that he would have cut that out. And have they had any problems? You would think that would flood.
Well, and so then it makes me wonder, like, was this just a downstairs, like not necessarily subfloor, but maybe. So I think about the building that I work in. We come in on the 4th floor, and then you have to go down. But first floor on the backside is actually ground level on the backside.
Yeah.
Is it potentially that you come in on the ground floor on the front side, but there's another level that you can go down?
Yeah.
That would be considered a basement, but it's not under. It would be underground kind of on the front side, but it wouldn't be underground on the back side.
Well, if you look at the pictures of the building that I have in the sources thing, it is a square building that it's not on a hill. It's not. And the guy said there are no windows in the basement. So
that's really interesting.
I don't think it is on a hill or anything like that. I just think I think he took the crawl space and he dug it out. I'm
either
just
that
curious.
or because if it was a hospital, maybe that they had more down there because they would have had. Maybe they had a morgue. The morgue was down in that area, and so maybe it was just it wasn't a big space, but it had room to be filled up because you can't just you're not going to just go into a crawl space that's 2 feet deep and dig out a room that you can hold banquets in.
Yeah,
not into limestone.
No, and not without having proper beam supports. So I wonder if there was just, I know people are like, oh my God, just get to the point. Yeah, we're talking about this because we're confused. Because I remember hearing her say he dug it out. I'm like, oh, maybe there was just a bunch of stuff in there. But I wonder if it was,
had to be it.
I wonder if it was already framed to be down there.
Yeah.
And it had stuff in there from potentially being a morgue. Because that's where Amy said she sees people coming in and out of the wall.
Yeah.
And which would make sense then as well. Just maybe he expanded it further, and maybe she just used crawl space as a term to say it used to be really small.
Yeah.
I don't know either, but I did do a screenshot of Steve's face when she's talking about the lady that she meets in the bathroom because he's like, And then I noted it did sound like this was being played up for drama, so I can see why Steve was dubious.
Yeah. I said maybe she was coached this way in order because it was very early on. They had to get a following somehow. I mean, they roped in a bunch of us very early on.
Yeah.
So maybe they were just like, you gotta, because she paused really oddly, in a weird spot in her story, and it was I'm supposed to pause.
She was definitely doing dramatic stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, we know that never happens on TV. So.
No. I did note she's taller than Steve.
This was before he started, spacing it properly, right?
Yeah.
So this is where she's talking about how she encountered a ghost, and she knows it was a Spanish woman, which to me, they didn't elaborate on that. Which I think
just probably her clothing and her hair.
That's what I would assume. Yeah.
Which I also was like, is Spanish the right term, or would it be of Latina descent, or because we don't know? Spanish is Spain,
right?
Cuban, Puerto Rican, Mexican. I mean, there's so many different. So, but I think this was also
just
shot during that time where we weren't really
2011.
We still weren't really differentiating much there, where we are doing a lot more of that now.
So Steve asked if she was older, younger, any differentiating features. And she said, I was so terrified that I don't remember.
Which is not a description.
No. She said she was so scared that her purse, she backed up, her purse fell off her shoulder and scattered all behind her, which to be fair, I would probably do the same thing if I opened the door to go and pee. I'd be like, well, I don't have to pee anymore and all my shit's everywhere. So, but she did say you could see right through her. She had no color.
Yeah. And then I wondered, because I thought that Amy and other mediums I know have said that actual ghosts, at least to them, do not look like we think of ghosts would look like. They aren't see-through. They look like real people, and they think they're real people until they realize no one else can see them.
Well, but I feel like we've heard Amy run the gambit on that too, though, throughout this series of what she sees too, and how they might show themselves to other people. And so feel like we've heard the gambit of from transparent to solid. It be explained just different ways. So
possibly.
Then we go back to Amy, and she is talking about the woman she saw earlier with the Nursey shoes and the hat, and she walks up and down and up and down and up and down, and she back and forth. So it was very kind of chaotic, which is pretty on point for Amy in her earlier episodes because she hadn't really. I don't want to say mastered, but learned, I should say, how to kind of differentiate between the spirits and her. So you could definitely see in this that she was getting a lot of spirit energy. She kept rubbing her arms. She kept, fidgeting and doing a lot of movement. So it was very interesting, especially since we jump around and we've seen season 15 and then we go all the way back to 1. And so it was a very unique perspective to see her. So then we go to Steve, and we have another voiceover here. And so, Tess has seen a Spanish woman, but can't give me specifics. Doesn't help me in a hotel that used to be a clinic where there would have been hundreds, if not thousands of deaths. Can't speak to guests that have come and gone, but he can speak to Tess's father. So now we're going to interview Jack. Tessa's father. So we're talking to Jack, and Jack, the most significant thing that occurred, he's never talked about it before ever to anybody, which we have thoughts about later. It sounds so fantastical, so bizarre. And then he talked about how he was excavating the basement, which, like, again,
that does sound like he was digging it out.
Yes.
He was literally digging a hole underneath the house or the building.
Well, and that, again, I wonder if there was something small there and there was some foundation already set. Because, again, you can't just go and dig under your house without any supports.
Right. Well, you can, but it probably wouldn't end well.
What happens to the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz, the first one? Yeah, that'll happen to you.
Yeah. So Jack's in the basement, sitting down there, and he said, well, it's the basement. There's no windows. But I was sitting there and noticed the lights, some brightness over in the corner. I noticed a very small lady, Latin definitely, but very, very small. I looked at her and she was looking back at me. I was so surprised by the whole thing that it didn't register. I mean, some things are very difficult to accept and believe. So then we do go back to the voiceover. Jack and daughter have both seen a Spanish woman. And yeah, this is where, I mean, I know, like you said, AP, it was the early 2000s, but yeah, can we just say Latin Hispanic descent? Because we don't know. There's so many different variations.
And being in that Tampa, Florida region, there are
it could be a ton.
So many different things. So,
and I don't think we ever learned. Did Amy ever talk about it in the reveal?
I don't think they connected it to anybody, did they?
No, there was no connection. No, we only get one background story in this.
Yeah. But my guess is she was thinking more Tessa and Jack were, and Amy too. Amy did say Latina, but I think they were all just thinking like Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
All those people speak Spanish. Yep. Not all of them, but a lot of those Latina people with those backgrounds speak Spanish or a form of Spanish. So that's probably what she was thinking as Spanish speaking, not necessarily from Spain.
But I do think at that time, though, that Spanish was used as a kind of a collective term. Yeah. So we're just,
Spanish.
we've grown
learned.
and evolved as most humans have in the last decade plus
3 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yes, we are. I don't think they said it with any malicious intent. I think
no.
The way that it was.
No,
so now Amy's up on the 3rd floor, and we go into room 305, and she's really pulled into this room, and she says it's vacant, so she's able to go in there. She said there's somebody in the hallway, and they're laying face up, and so she's gonna go in the room and kind of see what she can find. So then we're back to Jack. And he and Steve are talking. The clinic, had remained clinic/hospital, had remained empty until 22 years ago when he bought it, rehabilitated it, and now it's the hotel where they're at right now. And then Steve states a really obvious sentence that says, "So many people, I would assume, passed away here." Yes, Steve. It was a hospital for decades.
It's kind of like, did anybody else die in this town?
So do you know of any deaths in this town? Nope, they're all
still alive.
And I think Jack confuses the timeline a little bit here just with his statement, because he did purchase the building in 98, which was stated before, which was 13 years prior, even though it was a clinic for up until 22 years ago. So at that time. So that means it was sitting vacant for nearly a decade.
Yeah.
But I swear they said something else. Who knows? I'm all over the place on what I remember today.
So then we meet front desk clerk Ray, and I thought it was...
He doesn't really add anything to the story.
No, he doesn't. This was a pointless.
He just says
exchange.
the same. You know why they kept that in is because a customer complained
about 305.
About room 305.
Yep.
And that's why they left that in.
I did note it was interesting that Ray stayed seated and Steve was standing.
I just don't think he wanted to stand.
That could be.
Frankly,
into it.
I read your note in there and I was like, I got more of the I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
Ray's like,
someone might call while we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I answer the phone.
That's fair.
Yep.
That's fair. All right. So now we go into segment 2 and Steve's going to dig through the archives.
Digging through the archives.
So he says, from what I'm finding out about Ybor City, it has a pretty violent criminal history. I'm talking execution style killings, money laundering, and racketeering. To which I said, "Oh my."
That's our other shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be the other one.
Yeah. So then they meet with a historian. And Amy, I didn't understand your notes here. Can you specify where you said interesting how
we don't have Steve being like, "Hey, I found this local historian. His name is Paul. Hi, Paul. Tell me about what you know about this." We just get into it because Amy, I know this is your note, but it was just like Paul just starts talking and he's sitting awkwardly, like they're sitting outside in like kitchen chairs.
It was so
with, like, very straight back, and he's got his hands just on his thighs, just sitting there. Like the engagement was so weird.
It was kind of weird. And it's like all that we see is Paul talking to the camera. We don't hear any questions Steve asks. Steve doesn't say a word.
We just see that they're seated across from each other. There's no table.
It was the most I was
it was awkward
watching it.
Somebody was trying to do something really fancy, and
this is where I saw the shaky cam.
Degree.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But and then it would switch from Paul, the historian, to Amy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Paul, Amy. We didn't see Steve he was shown sometimes. His face was shown to show us that Paul is talking to Steve.
Their cutaways were so
bizarre.
I think they were just trying to make it all very fluid instead of being like, here's Amy and now here's Steve. And it was just like Paul's talking and now we hear Amy talking. And just that they got better as this.
Yeah. I mean, it's early on. They're just figuring it out. It's fine. I just think it's interesting.
A weird bird's eye view of Paul and Steve, and the camera was like up on like this. It was just, I didn't understand it. It was very, very weird. And then Amy talks about how she's getting a little bit of a mafia thing here. The thing is, it's not everybody is not Italian. She said it's all races and dealings. So it's a very inclusive mafia.
Well, we think of organized crime as being Italian, and it's not just Italian. The mafia, as we know it, is Italian, but there's a Finnish mafia, there's a Russian mafia, there's they're not, it doesn't mean they're Italian.
There's a Finnish mafia?
Yes, I knew somebody whose dad or grandfather or something was part of the Finnish mafia.
Wow.
In high school. He told everybody that's the first thing he'd tell people.
Oh, that would be
Hi, my dad is part of the Finnish mafia. He was an exchange student from Finland.
Interesting. That is insane. I did not know that. So then we go back to Paul, who said there was a war between the families and it was violent. And then they showed
bada bing, bada boom with no
warning, no nothing.
I was typing, so I didn't see it.
Dead body.
So was this Romeo and Juliet wars between Italian families? And
must have been the Montagues and the Capulets, probably. Yep. But it looked to me like the body didn't have feet.
I didn't look that closely. I should.
It was a legit, but I said the news was wild. Like there's dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah, they were.
Yep.
In my research for my other podcast, Volsteadland, we saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of, especially like Bonnie and Clyde, their cars all riddled and there's blood everywhere.
Their bodies were still in the car when it was pulled around town.
Yeah.
To prove that they were dead.
Yeah.
Wow. That's sad.
It's pretty hideous. Sad. And then everybody's taking pictures and it's in the newspaper for little kids to see.
But I mean, they used to
go to public hangings. Like they
public.
make a day of it.
Yeah.
All of those things used to be.
Let's pack a lunch and go watch Sally get hung.
True crime. It probably wasn't Sally. It was probably Peter. But true crime has been obsession has been around for a long, long time. It's not. People have always been fascinated by trying to understand all of these things. So it's not like this is a new phenomenon that we're all talking about, with the podcasts that we listen to and the documentaries and all of that sort of stuff. This was part of that morbid curiosity that humans have always had. And
we still do.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we're not in the medieval times anymore with the things that they used to do.
Yeah.
Let's not think about it. So then we meet historian Dr. Gary Morminio is what Amy found out his last name was. And
I looked him up.
Do you want to talk about him a bit?
Sure, just a little. I just did
Yeah.
a little digging on him, and I don't remember why even. Oh, I know. I was looking for, this is the man that discusses the 1,000,000-page suicide letter with all the
My God.
blustering and all that.
Yep.
And so I was hoping to find that document online. So
Okay.
anyway, that's how I found it. I Googled this person's name that we're going to talk about in a sec, and Dr. Gary, historian Gary, and it came up with this Gary Mormino, and I saw a video of his, so I know it's the same guy. And he's written a couple of books, I think. And I have some other links that I'll put out if anybody wants to read more about stuff. He's done speaking engagements where he talks about this particular guy and
Sure.
stuff like that. So, yes.
Yeah.
So he talks about Jose Luis
Avellanal.
Alvania.
Alvania.
I think he said it like Alvanio,
Yeah.
didn't he? Like it
Avellanal.
should seem like it
'Cause
would
it should-
end in EAU, but it ends in NAL. Anyway, it's hard for us to say
Anyway,
it, right?
Jose, we're sorry to everybody that
Jose Luis, we're so
we
sorry.
are saying it so
Even though
poorly.
you're a psychopath.
Right. So he was born in 1903. Jose Luis was the only child of privilege, and his father is the one who opened the clinic in 1903 when he was born. And then we get a dapper picture of him and, black tie with the bow tie. And, he just looks like,
Slicked back hair.
yes, very, very like 1920s.
Mhm.
So Steve
Well,
says,
And we
sorry,
we do hear from Dr. Gary that he uses both clinic and hospital, but he
Mhm.
calls it a clinic for most part. But he's like, this wasn't just merely a clinic. This was a modern day hospital.
Mhm,
So I think that the term of the time was probably clinic
Probably.
Sure.
Yeah.
before
That's
they
probably what
started,
used.
differentiating.
before they actually determined that it should technically be called a hospital. I don't know.
Yeah. So Steve asks if he was a doctor, this Jose, and Dr. Gary says, honestly, I'm not sure whether he had a medical degree or not. And he was actually investigated for running a diploma mill.
So he was anything he wanted to be.
Yeah. So he was anything, which, yeah.
His mom told him he could be anything he wanted when he grew up.
And so he said, I will take that literally.
I will double
Challenge
down.
accepted.
Yeah. So he went to Mexico in the mid 1940s, bribed his way into creating this Legion of Honor, which allowed him to be decorated with the rank of Lieutenant General. And he would not respond to you unless you called him General, which,
Yeah.
and I could understand if you've worked your way up and you've
Right.
earned it, then for
sure.
sure.
For sure.
For sure.
Mhm.
It's like if you've worked to become a doctor.
Yeah.
Any doctor, you have a PhD, you've earned that to
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
called doctor.
Right.
But to
Just
bribe
make
your way,
yeah. And put on an outfit and make
Yeah.
yourself some diplomas.
that's insulting to anybody who's a general. So
Yeah.
I said he sounds like a douche.
Yeah. He does.
And we learned that I'm not far off.
Yeah.
Ugh. So he came back to the United States and stayed in Ybor City until he died in 1982.
I looked up for how he died, and I didn't see much except one article said he died of natural causes.
Did we ever
Well,
get his age on anything either? Because
He was born in 1903.
2003. So
I
he
thought
was
that's when
79.
the clinic was.
That is. It's the
Same-
same time as
same
when the
thing.
clinic
Okay.
opened.
Yeah.
That's all I heard was
His
when
dad opened the clinic.
Yeah. But he was, so he was 79 when he died. Never married, but he claims in his suicide note that he had 500 relationships.
Hmm.
To which I said, right.
Sure, Jan.
Sounds kind of incel-y to me.
Well, he did note that he has an absolute need. This is a quote, an absolute need the opposite sex. So
Okay. Gross.
sounds to me like he was a sex addict.
Yeah, which that's not gross. Being a sex addict is not gross.
Right.
But with this person, it is because he was gross. So he wrote a suicide note, but he doesn't kill himself.
Mm-mm.
What is that?
He changed his mind, I guess.
I
Mhm.
suppose. I mean, I'm glad, that he didn't. Well, gosh, that's tricky. So then they show snippets of this suicide note,
Mhm.
and it's a very interesting suicide note. It's very hard to read.
Yeah. I'm surprised it wasn't in Spanish. But I guess he was born here, but
Yeah.
his
Mhm.
parents are from Cuba. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Who put the disturbing doll in there?
Me, because it says that's a rather disturbing document if you look at it. That was who was saying that. Dr. Gary.
Yeah.
Says that's a rather disturbing document if you look at it. And then they go, the next scene is this doll.
Okay.
Yep.
So I noted, I see your disturbing document and I raise you. And then I put the picture in. Disturbing doll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Poor Amy.
And I hate it. But Amy, I do think that the word behind suicide, I think that's his signature. I think that's his name.
Too. Yep. I noticed that when you said that, I was like, I didn't even think of it being a signature because it looks like it's in the middle of the document.
It is.
It does.
It's completely in the middle of
it's not at the bottom of the page like you would sign a document.
Mm-hmm.
It says, I commit suicide. And I said in the notes, I wonder what that means. And AP said that looks like a signature. And I'm like, yep, it sure does. But that is not where I would have put a signature in the middle of the document.
Most people put a signature at the end of the document. Bottom, yeah. But, Jose,
it looks like he signed off and then was like, and another thing, and then went on and wrote 70 more pages.
Mm-hmm.
He put down his pen, went and had a drink, and was like,
I'm not done yet.
Wait a minute. Wait a gosh darn minute. I got some more to say.
Like Amy said, and another thing. Or I just find it funny, how women do that historically when we're done with the fight.
Yeah.
I just find it funny.
Yep.
So as I was saying earlier, you can definitely tell this is an earlier season because Amy's mannerisms are different. And here in this, she rubs her arms a lot.
Yeah.
And
she seems really agitated. And we find out she is, but
she's just not. It's very clear that she's not in control of what's happening, and she's like fighting to gain control.
And she's clearing her throat a lot, which I had noted maybe seems like I've heard mediums talk before when they're like that it's like there's a presence, a spirit trying to prevent them from speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we get a voiceover with Amy talking about the mafia presence in the basement is strange. She's getting that it was a hospital and she's getting darker energy and getting a little bit nervous. And there were bad things done. They were done in different rooms. She hears fire. She hears gas. So it's a really interesting. She's just getting a lot of different senses.
And that's probably why her throat was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then we're back to Gary. Oh my God. This was so fucked up, you guys. So Dr. Gary talks about Jose's obsession with death and eternal life. And so he didn't want to die. He wanted to live forever. So he was petitioning local boards, when they say boards, does he mean like
city
research boards?
No.
Or like a board of like putting a pin up on a board and like looking for cats to reanimate and with like little tear strips,
I don't know if he actually ever did any.
That'd be a funny graphic.
I don't know if he actually ever did any experimenting. He wanted to, but it doesn't say that he actually did.
Steve hauls out those pictures of the things he used, he said. The devices that he used.
Because he wanted to bring cats back to life.
He wanted to reanimate them, yeah. Which reminds me that The Reanimator, it's a good movie. It's a bad good movie, or it's a good bad movie, whatever.
What do you mean?
I just think of Pet Sematary.
Yeah. It's like it could be a riff tracks.
Okay.
It's made to be cheesy, sort of.
Okay.
Cult, not cult in the way we think of a cult.
Yeah. But like a Rocky Horror Picture Show cult.
Yeah. Like that.
And then Gary says, God knows whether he was experimenting with humans, and he was simply convinced that only he had the truth, which like all of these are pointing to he was just a picture boy of narcissism here.
Yeah.
Like picture perfect narcissism. And like reanimating cats, that's fucking weird.
Well, not trying to play logic, but I'm sure that going with that is because there would have been a plethora of cats around as mousers around all the buildings and different things to take care of other creatures. And sadly, people wouldn't likely notice if they were gone, kind of thing.
I know, but it's gross.
Because he didn't have humans to work with.
Yeah.
Well, can I just interject something I found about him today?
Yes.
It'll be short. He was
like Steve.
So this is an article from area.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. It says that Jose Luis Avellanal Jr. was the doctor's schizophrenic son who did some pretty horrific things in his lifetime. Father often found himself treating people his son injured, including a young boy he shot in the eye and another who he persuaded to try a homemade electrical chair.
And the kid lived?
Yep.
When you get shot in the eye?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Schizophrenic. That explains a lot.
Yeah. And it says, frightened by their son's behavior, father and his wife tried keeping their son in solitary confinement, but he escaped, stealing cars and endangering lives. Then they tried shipping him off to a military school where he kidnapped a young woman.
Great.
And he attempted to publish articles regarding his experiments on raising the dead. And I think that's what they're talking about with the boards, because the guy does say later that he was writing to or maybe it was Steve that reiterates this at the reveal, but that the guy was writing letters to the Mayo Clinic and all these other places, but they didn't. They just let him go.
I wonder, was he actually ever diagnosed, or are we doing a look back and say he was because that during that time, I don't know if that diagnosis would have actually existed, and otherwise, I
think it's safe to say he was mentally ill, but they may not have had a name for it back then.
Yep. I think it's just kind of part of this, and him in particular, and then saying this or talking about that makes me think of American Horror Story Asylum. That's what a lot of this episode made me think of. Yeah.
That was a good
So I just did a super quick Google search, and in 1910, the Swiss psychiatrist Paul Eugen Bleuler coined the term schizophrenia from the Greek words schizo and friend. So even if he had it, it probably was so new that they wouldn't have even thought to diagnose him with that.
Right.
Because 1910 in Switzerland, who knows how long it took to make
women
its way.
Were diagnosed with hysteria for however long before it was realized there's actually something real there.
Okay, well, AP, we are hysterical though, so they weren't wrong.
That's right.
We can't even think. Put us back in the kitchen.
That's where we're headed.
I mean, yeah, it's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. So then we're AP. You're AP. Nope. Amy's in the basement, and she said there's something wicked here. There's panic, there's confusion, tunnels, and then so she's kind of panicking in the basement. That would be a really good band name.
Panicking in the basement?
Yeah.
As opposed to the disco.
As a disco, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So Steve asks, we're back with Steve and Dr. Gary. There any evidence that he might have used the hospital with reviving of the dead body stuff? And Gary says, if you connect the dots, he lived 25 yards from the clinic, and the family owned the clinic until 1982. So without saying so, he probably was he probably did stuff on the dead.
It's interesting that he was born the year the clinic opened, and he died the year the clinic ended.
It was probably only his family keeping it around.
Oh, I'm sure, but it's just interesting that his father wouldn't have. His father was probably dead by then. If he was 79,
he was 79.
Yeah, so he probably kept the clinic running later.
Yeah.
But
so I'm gonna drop this in the notes. But we were talking. You mentioned tunnels and things again in here, and we talked about how there probably wasn't not a lot of basements in the area. However, there's a lot of articles about the tunnel systems that were in Ybor City.
And then we know there were tunnels under there because it was used during Prohibition and stuff.
Kind of like the Nicollet Island. But yeah, there was more of that. So then a lot of these places, so what had rooms that were connected so that they could come in through the basement. So if, this hospital likely had that basement piece that connected the tunnels to it.
Yeah.
So then we're back in with AP. Amy. My God, I keep saying AP. No, I mean AP's here, but
she's not going through the basement.
She's not in the basement. So Amy's back in the basement, and she said it feels like there should be a way to go through this wall into the other room. And then she does a voiceover saying how it's frustrating because she can't follow the people into the walls. And And she said as soon as one person walks away, another walks in and gives her information.
Mm-hmm.
And then Amy, you had a note.
Well, yeah, I just said I thought it sounded to me like I said, since when can't ghosts go through walls? And I guess that's not really what I meant. What I meant was, why can't they come back and keep talking? But if they're leaving,
they just didn't want to
talking. That makes sense. Obviously, Alan can't walk through walls.
Yep.
But I guess I meant, why couldn't they come back? But
I got the feeling from how she was talking about it is that they were getting frustrated with her. So they were just because she wasn't, because she says that later on, like they were all yelling at me and they were mad at me and they're telling their story, but they're all frustrated because I can't help them right now. Yeah. And so I think it's kind of like just they hung up the phone and walked away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably it.
So then we're back to Steve and Dr. Gary talking about this guy, Jose. He's a liar. He's obsessed with the dead. He's got narcissistic personality. And then Steve goes, would you be surprised if tomorrow you found out there were bodies in his basement? And Dr. Gary said no.
No.
And I was like, well, that's kind of anticlimactic. Like, I don't understand the point of that whole scene. Like, what? Okay, great. Yeah.
Well, Steve's getting at thinking Amy has seen bodies in the basement.
I suppose, yeah, but
and he wants to tie it together, but we didn't do that, did we?
Yeah, no, yeah. And then we're back to Amy, and she's just like going on and on about how there's people coming out of the walls.
People coming out of the walls. Oh. Her voice was so weird when she was doing that.
Heart
coming out of the walls.
Heart attack.
I think she does that. That voice comes in a lot when she's overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. She says they're all a mess and broken and everything. And that's where I was like, is this potentially morgue?
Yeah.
Because if they're all looking different and disfigured and different things, and just the coming in and out of the wall, that was the only thing I could think of.
Yeah. Well, and she said it almost feels like some of them are in the wall, like literally in the wall. Yeah. And that's when I thought maybe somebody was closed up down there, like shut down there and then walled up.
Like a mafia punishment, maybe, or
that was an old Catholic punishment too.
Oh, God.
Where there were several nuns and others that have been walled up in buildings before.
What is wrong with people? It's fine. I hate everybody. Okay. So then we get to Amy, and there's somebody yelling fire in the basement, and that's a male, and Matt asks to describe that, and she said he's wearing a nice suit. He has dark brown hair, and he has the goop in it, she said. And it's combed back. He has a white shirt on, a dark suit, even has a bow tie on, and no facial hair, strong face. And so Amy had a really interesting note there.
Well, I just said she described him exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what that picture looked like.
Yeah, it was.
But then I wondered if, because, and I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but in the reveal, she says she doesn't think he ever killed anybody. But I'm wondering if maybe she was seeing his father. Maybe that wasn't him she was seeing. Maybe that was his father, and he just looked a lot like him.
And she does talk about how this person that she's seen is confused. He doesn't know what's
confused
going on.
About his own death. And that's why I started looking up Jose's death.
Yeah.
To find out. So Jose, the son, to find out how he died, but apparently just natural causes. So I'm wondering if she didn't see the dad.
Well, and this, we get a little bit about the dad at the beginning, just that he opened the clinic. And then the next questions, I got a little confused at the beginning, like
I did too.
When Steve was like, oh, was he a doctor? And okay, is the dad a doctor? Or was
the dad was a doctor?
Right. But
I thought the dad was a real estate developer.
Oh, I thought
and that's why he developed the land. Let me go back and look.
No,
you two talk amongst yourselves.
Dad opened the clinic.
Right.
Real estate developer was last
week's
episode. Also in Florida. Yeah, selling swampland to Michiganders.
That's right.
That's right. Okay.
But there was just confusion because it wasn't really clear who they were talking about right off the bat. And then they just started talking about Jose Luis.
Yeah. And his dad was Jose Ramon.
Yes.
And when I did a Google search on Jose Luis, I all these things came up for Jose Ramon, and I was like, did they get his name wrong? What's going on? And then I realized that was his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
I loved that Steve, when he's talking to, let's see, when is this? Who is he talking to here? Oh,
Harry,
no, he's talking to us.
Harry?
So when I start out looking for the little old lady and find out that thousands of people died in this building when it was a clinic, and then he starts talking about this dude, and he says he left a suicide note, which is 9 pages of lunacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that tracks.
I mean,
Steve thinks he's a serial killer.
I'm still in that, like, there were thousands. I mean, I know it was open for a long period of time, but that just seems like there was an issue if there was that, like, so many people dying every year.
It was open for 80 years, 79 years. So
still to have,
you had 2 wars that went on.
Oh yeah, that's
but
good.
the wars weren't on our soil.
No, they weren't, but maybe they should. I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, you probably shouldn't have thousands of people die, but
I mean, I mean, he could be like 2000s, but when 2000, when you're saying thousands, I think like
10, 20, 30,000.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're back with Amy in the basement, and she's getting touched, a little push, little nudge on her back. She thought it was female, but now she doesn't know. She's wondering if it was the guy with the goop in his hair. And she's really panicking because they keep touching her. And she doesn't like that. So it's interesting to see her freaking out, because she's like,
we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
She said, I think we need to leave. And they did. And I was surprised.
Yeah.
Surprised that she's like, I'm done.
Yeah. And then we get a voiceover where she's talking about how sometimes she just needs to shut down. The dead people here are angry with me because I can't help them. Also, now they're starting to attack me, which kind of goes back to all the spirits walking away from her. Like, you can't do anything for me. What good are you? So,
right.
So yeah, they left. And then we get
I'm not here to help you with your little TV show.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. The spirits are saying to her.
So then we're at the sketch, which I really liked this sketch. I thought it was very personable and like a lot of back and forth. And you can, tell it's definitely, I know we keep saying this, but it's a newer episode because they're going back and forth. Sorry, older episode. Thank you. And then Amy said he's what we would call a metrosexual.
I know. I was like, I haven't heard that word in a long time.
Very 2000 lingo for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then the sketch artist says something like that. And Amy said, yep, that's him. Yeah. And I was like, that is very nice. Then yes, that is what I saw.
Yep. It was much more natural.
Yeah, it was. So now we're at the reveal. And we go over, Steve gives us the whole spiel. Amy and I haven't encountered each other since the beginning. I have no idea what she's encountered. She doesn't know what I encounter. Now we decide if they match up. So he introduces her to Tessa and Jack, the owners. And then Tessa tells Amy about the apparition in the basement bathroom she saw. And then Tessa said she knows that she was of Hispanic or Spanish descent. And I just
we already talked about that.
Yeah, we already talked about that.
We probably talked about most of everything that's in there. We don't have to spend too much time here.
No, the one big thing that we didn't talk about yet was Jack letting his daughter suffer for a while, thinking she was the only one that had this major experience.
Yes.
And, he was like, well, I didn't want to look foolish. And she's like, so I get to? I carried this cross.
I thought that was great that she said that.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Oh, and you get to keep it to yourself?
And she said all these years. So yeah, I mean, it's been a while. So good
clearly
for her.
She told him when she saw it, and he didn't go, oh, I saw it too.
Yeah.
That would be the first. I mean, her brother and her run it, and her dad fixed it up. So of course she would go and talk to him about it.
Right.
I mean, all he had to say was like, girl, I had the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he saw it when he was renovating the basement.
Yeah.
And so that would have been
long before the basement had a bathroom in it.
Yes. So I just, I never told anybody, blah, 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 blah. It's like,
I didn't want to look foolish.
You've watched her like have an issue and have people questioning her about things, and you've sat by and just watched it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you're, I'm not a parent, but if your child brings something to you, whether they're an adult or not, and you've seen something similar, it's okay to confirm.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, that's really interesting because I saw something like that too.
Yeah. It just validates him.
And then he said, I'm happy that I'm sane, which means that he let his, like you said, his daughter go around. And, did he think she was insane?
Think she was? Yeah. Well, no, because he saw it too. He knew that she wasn't.
He freely let her think that and appear insane to anybody else.
Which is so douchey.
Yeah, that's kind of. I want to note that we talked earlier. We didn't think that the quote unquote Spanish lady was connected to anybody. Amy did say it was the nurse lady, the lady in the Nursey shoes. She thinks it's her. We just don't know who that is.
Yeah.
We don't have a name for her or anything.
Yeah.
That was a nurse that worked there.
Oh, I just kind of always connected the two of those, no matter what you just said. I just kind of always figured that, but we didn't get any Steve
I just forgot
connection.
That one. I said it earlier.
Yeah.
We didn't get any connection from Steve because we really only got, there was a Mafia here and there was this lunatic.
Yeah.
So then,
he goes, I don't think we need to go through every little thing. We're going to be here all day long.
No. So then Steve talks about Jose and how he was charismatic and narcissist, and does he sound familiar to you? And then she said yes. And if, he breaks out the photo and Amy says, wow. And then she says, I had a sketch done of it and they show it. And it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. The eyebrows are totally different. Like, I don't even know why the sketch artist drew those eyebrows all bushy like that, because Amy specifically said,
yes,
he combs them and he cuts them so they're perfect. And then they're drawn like bushy. Ed Asner. I don't get it. But
very, oh my God, who's Dan Levy's dad? Eugene Levy. Yeah. They're kind of like that.
Yep. For the younger people, Eugene Levy. Yeah. For my people, Ed Asner.
Yeah. So this is really, really interesting because at the end, there's nothing they need to do. They didn't give them any, like, that you need to sprinkle salt on the exits. You need to bring nothing. There was nothing. It was just Amy voiceover. Hotels can be hard to investigate. And now that their stories have been told, I think many of them are ready to move on. So the only thing they needed was their stories told, but it was just interesting.
And I think part of that goes to the clients were not scared. They weren't asking for help to get rid of them. They weren't asking for things to not scratch me in the middle of the night. They just wanted to know who was there. And Amy and Steve told them who was there. And they were like,
and they have had no unexplained sightings, which indicates that maybe they still had some explained sightings. Like they're still seeing the nurse. But they know who it is now. So
I will say just before that, we had the back and forth with Amy and Steve, and Amy's like, no, I don't think that this guy did anything, was a bad, really.
He didn't kill anybody.
He didn't kill anybody. And Steve's like, so you're telling me this sociopath, lunatic, liar, narcissist, he didn't kill anybody? And she's like, yeah, no, he not that I gathered. And
she's like, no.
My favorite part though was that he's like, well, being a detective for as long as I have been, sometimes you got to go by your gut instinct. And sometimes, my gut tells me that he was up to no good, but Amy's findings say otherwise. And I'm like, so literally you have no actual evidence. There is nothing that says that he did anything, at least that was shown in the show.
Right.
So like a good Joe Kenda says, you can have a gut feeling all day long, but you need evidence to back that up.
So like a good detective, you can't prosecute somebody without evidence, right?
Right. Ugh, that reminds me. I know we're almost done, but I just want one more TV rec. The JonBenet Ramsey new show. It's very good, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I didn't know. So
What's the episode that talks about her death graphic?
The third episode is when, do you remember John Mark Carr, the guy that they found in Thailand who said that he killed her?
That he did her.
There is audio. He spoke to a journalist for a long time, years, saying that he wouldn't say that he did it, but then he kind of did. And he gives a very long description of how that evening progressed.
Doesn't even track though, because how would he get her in the basement?
He said he climbed in the basement window. But and I still think that what he said, I still think that was fantasy. I don't think that happened. It's possible, but I don't think so, because he acted like he was her boyfriend. We had a relationship. I loved her, blah, blah, blah. And she's 6 years old.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But so that part of the show, I would say for Megan or anybody who can't listen to things about things happening to children, don't watch that, or find I can put up the timestamps for when to start, when to stop, or when to stop and when to start back up.
Were they even connected? Like, had they ever had any interaction?
Yeah.
Oh, they did.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in this documentary that we didn't know.
Does it change your thoughts on who you think did it?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. It does. So I recommend watching it. But if you want, I will go find the timestamps and you can not watch that part where he's explaining that. But anyway, back to this one.
Interesting.
Yep.
So that was a good episode.
It was good.
It was very. It's interesting to see the new ones, the older ones after we've seen the new ones, because you can see how they've evolved and developed and grew. And so it was good.
Yeah. All right. Yep. So that's the end of our recap. I wanted to do an Allanism because we haven't done one in a while. It is time for an Allanism.
It's time for an Allanism.
And this is our first episode of season 6. So I wanted to get back to doing those since we haven't done one in a bit. Or if you're new here, here's the deal. My dad, Alan, passed away in 2019. He was an old radio TV guy who loved the spotlight. As he aged and his mind faltered, he started saying some really odd and hilarious things. And luckily, my stepmom wrote it all down. And I just want to point out, we're not making fun of him. He loved having these read back to him when he was alive. And trust me, he's happy to be a part of the show. So we just had Thanksgiving. So this one, I literally rolled dice for the number. And this is the Allanism. This food was wonderful with a passive kind of entry.
I guess I would prefer a passive kind of entry rather than explosive.
Exactly.
I'd prefer a passive exit, but
yeah,
that too.
The passive exit is the bad part.
Yeah, the explosive exit's where they get you.
That's right. So, AP, do you want to tell us what we're doing next time?
Yeah. Next time we'll be discussing Ghosts of Deadwood, season 4, episode 12. May change depending on which you're on.
Yeah,
that's on Max/Discovery Plus.
Yeah, so it's probably season 3 on Travel Channel on demand, but aired January 10th of 2014. And I actually suggested this back to Megan and Amy when I was just a lowly little patron before I joined. No,
way back when.
But I remember this episode just. I don't know why I remember it so well, but I've been to Deadwood and it's kind of a really cool town. It's got some really interesting history, of course. We know another group that has been there, of course. Of course, I think he, that other one, like connected with Wild Bill and Calamity Jane, but I don't think that actually happened with.
Did he?
Anyways, so it's over 8s, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one because we've been thinking about it for so long. Well, thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you so much, everybody.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Activity Continues podcast. We really appreciate you giving us your ears for a bit. Please feel free to drop us a note and say hi. And join us next time when the activity continues.
Nailed it.